All right. So basically, we'll just open up our projects folder and we'll just continue from wherever we left off in our previous class. So quickly, I'll open up our project folder, which is in my desktop. All right. CMD. All right. All right. So this is where we left off in our previous class, and we'll just kickstart from here. And we'll just kickstart from here. So I'll simply just go over what we did, and then we'll just pick it up and then just go and wrap it up completely. And wrap it up completely. All right. So in our previous class, we we, we said that 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 we'll be communicating with our database, specifically relational database. And in order for us to communicate with database, one has to do what? One has to actually establish this connection or interact with the database, make using SQL, structured query language. But then I also said that it won't be necessary, all right, for us to actually step into learning SQL just to interact with our database. So luckily for us, there are libraries out there that can establish this interaction for us. So this library they make use of a technique or tool called ORM, object relational mapping, where you can still write your high level programming language and delete this library because will complete your high level programming language to a query language and carry out this interaction with your database for you without you necessarily writing your SQL code. So we saw a few of these libraries. We listed a few of them. So we listed Django ORM, which is specifically meant for Django Web Framework. So take Django ORM outside of Django Web Framework, then it doesn't actually work. Right. So since this is not actually since this project or since for this particular bootcamp, we're not actually dealing with Django, we're dealing with Fat API. So Django ORM wasn't the best call for us at this point. So we made use of what of SQL Alchemy. SQL Alchemy being what an independent library. So regardless of whatever framework you're using, SQL Alchemy will fit in just fine. Will fit in just fine. So we said that, and we also said that SQL Alchemy has no affiliation with Fast API, but we only use it within Fast API since it's independent of the library to do what to interact with our database. And then we said that in order to this should be database, not the database. Let me edit this. In order to do what to actually communicate with your database, there are things that there are things that needs to that there are things that needs to be put in place, right? So one of the things is that you have to let SQL Alchemy know which database would you be communicating with. So in this case, we said that what that we'll be communicating with our SQLite database. So we said that we'll be using SQLite for demonstration sake, right? This database is not suitable for development. And we want to move into development. We are going to change that database to an appropriate database, and such as PostgreSQL or MySQL. And then and then after that, we need to do what? Establish a connection using create engine. Now, create engine is a function that lives in the SQL Alchemy library, right? So this function is what we use to do what? To establish connection with our database. So basically, what this function takes in your database URL, which in this case is our SQLite here, right? And then we also we also added additional parameter here, which is what the connect argument. Now the connect argument is only necessary or is only being included when we are working with SQLite, right? Due to the way that file database system works. Okay, so we wouldn't add that parameter when we at least change this database. So we have to actually take that out. And then finally, we do what? We create a session. And like I said in our previous class, sessions are basically a medium of interaction with our database. So for each time you want to do what? To interact with your database, you do what? You create a session. And then once you're done interacting, you do what? You close that session. And when I mean interacting, I'm simply referring to CRUD operation, which I believe we are familiar with CRUD, right? CRUD operation. They create, they read, they update, they do what? They delete, right? So that's basically what CRUD operation is, right? So any of those operations, as far as what we are interacting with the database, okay, we are basically referring to CRUD operation, and that is all we need for what? To create or to connect and do what? To connect with our database. Now, the next thing is for us to do what? To actually create table. Now, remember, database are basically what? A collection of tables that stores information in an organized way, right? So if you are intending to save information, then that means that information has to be stored in a table, a table somewhere in a table within what? Our database. Now, in order for us to create this table, all right, usually, all right, usually we would have done what? Created this table making use of SQL, but that wouldn't be necessary. So that's where ORM comes in, where you write your high level, where your class can be mapped to what? To a table in a database. So basically, you create classes in high level programming language, and with the help of ORM, that classes can be mapped to a table in your database. And then whatever attributes you provide for that class can now be considered as column for that table. All right. I believe in our previous class we already started doing something like that. So going back to we created other files, right? So we're trying to actually see how we can do what? Segment this code, right? So that we don't end up putting every code within what? Our main.py file, and that wouldn't be nice because it would be difficult to actually maintain such application. So we also created a file called models of pi. So models.py is a file that was meant to do what? To hold all our table. So like I said, if you're intending to save information in a database, then that information is meant to be stored in a table that lives within what your that lives within our database. So in this case, we created a very simple one in our previous class, right? And we said that in order to create a table, we simply do what? We simply create a class, and that class need to do what? Need to actually inherit the declarative base. So the declarative base here is coming from our database file. I will say that this class, this declarative base class, all right, is a class, right, that provides us with all the tools we need to do what? To create table in database, right? Now, this instruction or the way this code are being packaged, all right, is based on SQL Alchemy. So if you're using another tool, then they may that tool because every library has their own documentation. So according to SQL documentation, this is how you do what? You create table using SQL Alchemy. All right. So if you're actually using another ORM tools, let's say Django ORM. Django Django ORM actually expects you to actually just create a class like this without necessarily doing what specifying your table name. Your class name will automatically be seen as what as your table name, right? But with SQL Alchemy, we need to do what to further provide that class that table name as it is, right? So every library has the way we are meant to do what use them, right? Every class has every library rather has a way or has a documentation to get us on how we actually meant to what to use them. And I said that in our free time that we can do that we can actually look up this library, right, and get to see other things that this library offers. Okay, other thing that this library offers. So basically, that was what we did in our last class, and we're gonna do what just continue from here. But then before we continue, I want to be sure that we are on the same page and there's no one that's having question pertaining to how we move from database.py down to models.py. Any question before we proceed? Any question? Any question? Okay. So the silence means no question. Silence means no question. All right, so we'll just continue from here, right? We'll just continue from here. Okay, so let's assume that this is our table, right? And this is our table that we intend. Let me close this one up for now. Let's close it out for now. So let's assume that this is our table that we intend to do what that we intend to store what our users, right? So we want a situation where users can be created or can be stored in this table called users. So that means that in order for us to save a user, that we need the user first name, the user last name, and the user what email. So we need those three things to save a user in a table within what our database. So basically, we can do what we can create a view or rather an endpoint that collect this information, and we can simply do what save it to our database. So we are going to go ahead and create that and create this that endpoint. So I'll go back to our main.py. This man here thing has a lot of information here. Rather, let's use a new file. So let's just use main.py somehow. So I will simply just create an endpoint, all right, that creates user, all right, that creates user. So I'll copy one endpoint there, and then we'll just edit it here. So we are expecting what that a user should do what should submit their information and then gets saved in the database, right? So if I go ahead and that means we needed what a post request. A post request calls the user is what is submitting this information. So I will simply call this a sign up kind of, okay. I call it sign up, and we don't want this route to be secured because of course that's the whole if you make a route to be secured, then it's difficult for the user to sign up, right? So we have this in place now, right? So we'll go ahead and do what we'll go ahead and write our pydantic model that should do what that should validate whatever is actually coming in before we finally save it to our database. So usually we would do what we will write our pydantic in this file, but like I said, our application will tend to grow, so we should start practicing the habit of handling a lot of codes, right? So we can do or manage or we can maintain or control how to do how to handle how to maintain the source code. So what I want to do now is I want to introduce us to the concept where we can do what where we can put all our pedantic code in a separate file, all right, and then simply use it within our main.py file, right? So we don't want to do this again. This thing that we are doing here, we don't want to do that again. So we want a situation where all pedantic model should stay at one point, right? So what I want to do now is I want to basically just create a new file, and this file I will call this file schemas. So basically, what this file will do is help us if write for pedantic model that should do what that should validate our information. So I'll create a new file and I'll call this file schema.py. Schemas. Schemas.py. Right, and this is where we want to do what? This is where we want to write all our pedantic. All right, all our pedantic source code. So I'll basically just say from pedantic import base model. Import base model. Then we write our first pedantic class for user. Right, for a user, and this will inherit from what from base model. So in our models, we have that we are expecting what first name, last name, and email. First name, last name, and email. Right. So if we go back again, and then we simply say first name, we're expecting first name from the users. All right, we are expecting first name from the users, and the first name should be string. That's simple. We don't want much validation. That should just do for the purpose of demonstration. And then string for last name, email, same thing here again, should be string. So that's simple, right? That's simple. So that should serve as validation for our user model. So it means that once the user try to create an account that we basically just want we basically just want to use this class and by whatsoever is coming in, right? We want to use this class and by whatsoever is coming in. So let's go ahead and let's see and let's pass this to let's go ahead and pass this to our main.py, and then that should carry out the I will simply, so we have a lot of codes here. So I would ignore what we have before now, and then I'll just go ahead and just bring out some importation here, right? And don't worry, in the next class, we'll talk about how we can handle, how we can structure our project
Please, I cannot hear you.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, yes, sir.
All right. So, so I was saying, um, so basically, what you want to do is you want to bring in your entire schemas file. Now, the reason for that is this: over time, you may have other parenting classes that should do what I should parent other kinds of data, right? And you don't want to be importing them one by one at some point. So what you can do is you can bring the entire file that down to your main.py and then just pick whichever one you want to use. Okay, so that's what we are doing here. We are bringing what the entire schema files, and then we can actually pass it to what our function, right? And that will carry out that version for us. So I could say that for this one here, we are expecting that the user should actually submit a request body that should be identified by Pydantic, right? That should match this. So that's basically what we want. And then at the end of it all, we basically just want to return whatever has been submitted. So in this case, I'll come back here and just return whatever has been submitted. And that will save as and that will save us and that will save for our post request for creating a user. So we just take this endpoint out. So we pull up our postman. Now while postman is coming up, I would bring up our while postman is coming up, I will bring up while postman is coming up. Let's put on our development server. Okay, development server. Let's bring that up. Right, so let's run that. So using UVCon, remember UVCon, and up, up, and it's really good. That should get it as up and running. Yeah. All right. So the endpoint is sign up. Okay. Endpoint is sign up, and it takes the post request. So that if we try to send a request now, then it should tell us that we're expecting a request body that should contain first name, email, and first name, last name, and email. So if you have to send that, then that should say it could not send request. Let's be sure what's happening here. Okay, so let's see. I think we're running into a problem. Let's see, let's see. My files are just scattered all over the place though. Right, so, so the having importation error. So like I said, our files are just scattered all over the place. So let me fix this up quickly. And, fix this up quickly. Let's see what's happening. Let's see. No, don't worry about what I'm doing. I will explain it soon. I will explain it soon. Okay. So, uh, see what's happening.
Excuse me, sir.
Hi.
Sir, please, I have a suggestion for the error.
Okay.
Okay, so I had the same issue when I was learning this. So what I did was that I went to the main folder, then I did to get on main.main semicolon app that's good.
Have I heard you properly?
Okay, so I said that I had the same issue when I was trying to learn data. So what I did was that I did UV icon main.main semicolon app dash dash root, and the thing worked.
Can you just put that in the comment section? Though? I can't really actually hear you properly. Please, please put that put that in the comment section for me, please. Mm, so- so- Okay. Mm, No, that didn't work. Give me a second. Let me
Maybe
figure that out.
so I think it should be app.main.
But that seems to work. You know, all we have to do. That actually works. All right, so that actually works, and I think I'll come back later to find out why that works. That means I don't know why that works. Okay, so let's just take this one, see that it's actually working as expected. Back to our, going back to our postman. Okay, so let's try making a post request to URL and see if you get appropriate error. Okay, so that is working as it provide the required parameters, the required request body. Okay, such as the first name, last name, and the email. So if you go to body and then we go to raw, then we can basically just provide those. So the first name, in this case I'll put sample here, and provide the last name. In this case, last name here I'll put user, and the email here I'll just provide sample user at gmail.com. Right. Okay, so let's go ahead and fire up that request one more time. Right, so that actually went through. Right, so now we have we now have the endpoint. We now have the endpoint that takes in the user's information. We have our table that should hold those information. Now, right now, what we want to basically do now is to simply get this information as it is, right? Is to basically collect this information rather as it is, okay, and then save it to the database, and then we can retrieve this information when we want to, or whenever we want to, okay, whenever we want to. So let's see how we can do that. Okay, let's see how we can do that. Okay, so first of all, now the thing here is that you could also write your possible code that will be interacting with your database in another file. So the thing is that we are basically trying to see how we can keep our main file as neat as possible, right? We don't want to cluster so many codes in the main.py file. So what I will do now is I will create a new file, and I'll simply call this file crude.py. Crude.py, all right, crude.py. And basically what this file will do is what this file will do for us is that this file will simply hold whatever whatever it basically hold every code pertaining to what to interacting with our database, right? So this is where we want to put all those codes that there will be need to do what to interact with database. Then we put it in that file. So I'll come here and I will create a new file. I'll come here and I will create a new file. So create a new file and I'll call this file crude.py, right? Crude.py. So the first thing is that the first thing here is that I basically want to write an interaction that should do what, that should save information to database. So the first one is basically code saving information to database. So these two will still work for any other kind of information, right? So it doesn't mean that this works for only first name, last name, and email, right? So but these steps is what you want to take as far as you need to do was save things to database. As far as you need to save things to database. So basically, what you what you want to do now is basically create a function, and this function will basically be a function that creates user, and like I said, once we intend to do what to communicate with our database, we we need to do what we need to basically create session. So I will this so basically this function here will take in the created session that has been created and the user itself and the user information itself. All right, and then we'll further do or go ahead to create to interact with the database by saving this information to the database. Okay, by saving this information to the database. So the thing is that how do we create or how do we add data to a table that has existed already? So let's go back to our tables. So we have a table here. Now, how do we create how do we save information to this table? So to save information to a table, you simply create the instance of that table. Right? Please, are you feeling? To add information to a table, right? We simply create the instance of that table, right? Where each attribute we assign the value for each attribute. So what do I mean by creating an instance of a table? Or so because this is a class that is mapped or that is considered as as a table. So if I intend to do what if I intend to add information to that table, I have to do what create an instance of this class. And creating an instance or a class it basically means saying invoke that class, which in this case is user class, right? Is user class and then parentheses. All right, and then if I assign this to a variable, say a, right? A now becomes what? A now becomes an instance of that class, or probably could say a member of that class. I think we talked about this in our previous class, right? So this is basically what I mean, right? So to add information to a table, you do what you simply create the instance of that class. Basically, doing what invoke that class. And then where each attribute of that class, we do what we assign the value of those attributes. So now we have the attribute first name, last name, and what an email. So in this case, after invoking this class, I can now do what specify those attributes by saying first name, right? First name, first name, right? And then we do what we assign the value. If first name was supposed to be hello, and that's what you just provide that value for first name, and then comma, the next attribute, the next required attribute, because the thing is that there's some attributes that are not actually required, all right? So but then those ones that are not actually required, SQL Alchemy won't necessarily ask you for the value of that attribute. But those ones that are actually required, it is mandatory that we provide those values. So in this case, everything here is required. Now, the reason why I'm not actually specifying any value for ID is because the moment you specify primary key equals to true for a particular field, right? SQL will automatically populate those fields for you, right? So you don't really need to specify the value for that, right? But then you can, all right? You can actually provide a value if you want, but then you can as well let SQL Alchemy do what to handle that for you, right? You can actually let SQL Alchemy to actually handle that for you. So going back again to saving of information. So you now provide what the value for the next attribute, for the next required attribute. And then probably this one probably could also provide hi at the last name. Same thing happens with the email. Now it doesn't really the order of this information does not actually matter, but the way and manner you provide this information does not actually matter at all, right? So your email can actually come first, and same thing with your last name, right? It doesn't matter. And this is basically how you do what, how you add information to what, to a table. So you do what, you create the instance of that table, and then you provide each value for what, for the attribute, for the required attribute of that class. And then do what, you simply just you use the save function that exists in SQL Alchemy, and then that information gets, and then that information will automatically get saved to the database. It's that simple, right? It's that simple. So we're gonna replicate this logic, right, in our crude.py file, right, in our crude.py file. So going back to crude.py, so we go back, and then and then we can start doing what, interacting. We can start interacting. All right, so same thing. To actually create, I will simply say new user, because I'm now creating a new user, right? New user should be equals to the instance of the class. Now we need the instance of the class, and which in this case what is our table. In this case, what the class is, what is the user class. So we need to bring in that user to our crude.py file. So I'll simply say from current directory of models, I want to import. I want to actually import, or probably let's just bring in the entire model itself, because we'll be using almost all the table there, right? So let's just bring in everything. So right, so and then we do what, we can create the instance of that class, say models dot user, right? And then we do that, right? And then within this, we can simply do what, start specifying what, we can start specifying the we can start specifying the appropriate attribute, the appropriate value for this for the required attribute of that class. All right. So the first thing here is our first name, right? Our first name. So I'll just simply copy first name, first underscore name, and the first underscore name will come from where? From user dot first underscore name. You're wondering where is user dot first underscore name coming from? All right. Now I know now you are the developer, you know how where you'll be using this function, right? And this function would be used within our main.py file, right? Here, right? Within our main.py file here, right? Because after user have submitted their details, we basically want to do what, we basically want to do what, save those details, and then those details can be found in a variable called the user. And then he said, and then this user now is what, is a pydantic model. So it means that if I want to actually get a specific value, a specific attribute, right, I can use what the dot notation. So what do I mean? If I if I if you see what we have here, right? So this actually return what we actually submitted. But then if I go back again and then if I go back again and then I simply say, okay, fine. Instead of actually returning the user itself, all right, let's go ahead and return just one attribute, all right, just one. Let's say the first name, all right. In this case, first name, and then you simply use the dot notation to return first name. And then if you should make another post request again, then you see that what that if you actually return only first name, it will actually return only first name. Let's be sure that our server is running well. Again back again, and then we make another post request. Another one. Shouldn't return everything. Since we're making the correction in another file. Right, so please this should come in here. Please. This should come in here. Right, so you see that we can simply just fetch a single item from that list. So now the thing is that the reason why we are not doing this instead of the reason why we are not doing this, right, where we use where we use the key name to do what to get the value of that particular key is because this variable there is holding a pedantic model. So it's similar to dictionary, but then it's not actually a dictionary. So that's where we can't use square brackets, right? To do what? To fetch an item. So now to fetch an item from a pedantic model, we do what? We simply use the dot notation. So if we intend to get first name, we simply say what? User dot first name, right? If we also intend to get the email, we simply say what? User dot what? Email. So we wouldn't do this, right? We wouldn't do this. And the reason for that is that this is a pedantic model and not a dictionary. But if you intended to actually do this, then you have simply just do what? Convert that pedantic model to our normal Python dictionary, and then in that case, we would do what? We would simply start getting what information with square brackets. So that same logic is what we are actually is what we are actually using here in our code file, because when we invoke this function, right, we are doing what? We are passing this user, right? We are passing that user to this function, this user here, this pedantic user there, right? And then since you are passing that parenting user to the function, we can now use do what? We can now use the dot notation to do what? To get each information and assign it what to the appropriate class attribute, which is what we are doing here at the moment. Now we know that we know that we are expecting what? First name. Now the reason or the reason for that, or how we come to know this, is because in our model, right, sorry, not model, in our schema, right, we provided what? First name. So it means that the schema is expecting what? That the request body should contain a dictionary key that is called what? First name, right? So as such, we can comfortably, right, use first name, because that is exactly that is exactly what is actually coming in from the request or from the client side, right? So once you have this setup, then you have nothing to actually worry about, right? So this name here can never change, because if this name here changes, then parenting won't even allow you to do what? To submit that information, right? but that has left. We actually demand that your request should carry this key alongside what assembly reference that key as it is, right? So that is what we are actually doing here. The same thing, we repeat the same process for last name and email as well. So I'll copy here and I'll just provide for last name. This should be last, and same thing happens to email. Email equals to user dot email. Right. And then once you've created the instance of that table, right, alongside with the attribute with the appropriate value, now to save, right? Now to save, we simply use what the add function. Right? We simply use the add function by SQL Alchemy. Now this method or these steps that we're actually following is from the SQL Alchemy documentation, not from Files API. So SQL Alchemy says that after creating the instance of of that table, right? Then you simply use what? You simply use the add command. You simply use the add command. So this is where the actual interaction will start. Interaction with database. Interaction with database. So remember, we said that every interaction has to be done with session, right? So it means that you have to create a session and then do what, carry out the interaction, and then do what, close the session once you're done, right? Close the session once you are done. Okay, so that's where our session actually comes in. Now our session here will be created in the main.py file and also sent alongside to this function here, right? So you can simply use that session and simply say session dot, right, add. So the add function will do what, will simply add whatever value or whatever instance of table that you've created, which in this case, this is the instance of. So it now knows that this information should be added to the table user, where the first name column should be equal to whatever value you have here. Last name column should also contain this value. Same thing we want with the email column. Same thing with the email column. All right. So we simply add what? You simply add that instance of that table. In this case, what is new user. Right. Now once you finish adding, then we can remember that in our database of Pi, we do what? We turn off the commits and the auto flush. So we said that we want to handle this manually. So this is where we can do what? We can start handling things manually. So going back again, we can now simply do what? Commit those changes. Right. So session dot commit those changes. So commit is also a built-in function. It simply means send these changes to our database. So this should be commit it. Right. And then after that, then we basically want to refresh. Then SQL Alchemy actually explains that after adding and committing, you refresh. So you refresh the current data that was added. In this case, new user. So this actually happens when you are saving information. So those are the steps you want to take when saving information. So you create the instance of whatever table that needs to actually carry out the new data that needs to be sent there. After that, you add the new data, you commit it, you refresh the new data. And then at the end of it all, we want to basically just return the user that was created. So I'll simply just say return new user. Right, that's simple. Return new user. So that is that. And that is that. Okay, that is that. Right? That is and the rest of them, then you wouldn't want to do this. All right. So this add is for what is for saving information to data. Right. It's for saving information to data. Right. There are other functions there that SQL Alchemy actually offers. That's why I said that in our spare time we can simply look up this documentation. Right. So now that we have our function to create, we can simply do what? We can simply use it within our we can simply use it within our main.py file. So going back to main.py, we want to bring in, going back to main.py, we want to actually bring in our CRUD because we are going to use it, right? We are going to use it, our CRUD, and then we can we can start creating these users. We can start creating these users, right? So now within our route handler, before we even get to return all these things, before we even get to return all these things, I would simply say let new user remember remember this function because we are about to assign a function to this variable called new user, right? And that function is called creating of user that is found in the crude.py file, right? So crude.create user function. Because now we are assigning this to a variable because at the end of it all, we want to send back that this variable. And this variable here is would be a value that is what that's being returned by this function. By this function, it will be a value that's being returned by this function, which in this case is our new user here. And so after all this has been completed, then this function will return new user at the end of it all. New user at the end of it all. New user at the end of it all. So having that in mind, we now know that once we carry out this function, right? That this function will do what? Will return a new will return a value. Now whatsoever value is being returned, we simply want to do what? Send back that value. We simply want to send back that value. Okay. So having that, now remember we said that this function takes in two required arguments, right? The first one is what is the session that we need to do what in now that we need to interact with the database. And then the second value is what is the user itself, the item that needs to be saved, which in this case is our user here. Now, how do we create a session? Now, session is a class in SQL Alchemy. So we simply need to import that session. We simply need to import session. So we simply say from SQL Alchemy.orm, we need to import session. To import session. So this is what we need to do what? To interact with our database. We need session to interact with our database. But then the problem here is this. The problem here is this. The problem here is that we already have that session somewhere in our database. We already have that session somewhere in our database. So if you go back to our database, then you see that we have a variable that holds that session. We have a database that holds that session. So basically, what we want to do is what we need to bring in this session here because this session has been configured already, so it knows which database it is going to what is going to interact with, right? So it knows which database is going to actually interact with. So there's no point of us now going to do what to create a new session when we already have a configured one here, right? So what we can do is go back and we edit our file. Go back and we edit our file. So instead of bringing session from SQL Alchemy, let's bring it from our database. So from from database. We want to go ahead and import. I think let's see how we saved it. DB session, okay, database session. Going back, database session, database session. All right. So having that, we can do what we can start interacting with our database. We can start interacting with our database. All right. So now to create session, or to create a new session. All right. Oh, sorry, not in session, but to establish a session for interacting with our database, we simply invoke this that session there. That we simply just do this. We invoke. Oh, sorry, that's not what I meant. Simply invoke this session here like this, right? And then we pass that invocation as what to our function here, right? So I'll call this DB database, right? I'll call this a database. So now we can simply do what, pass this man to what to our function here alongside what with our user that has been created. And then those two variables or those two values, right? The session itself alongside with the user that's been sent here, right? Would be sent directly to what to our function called create user function. Now, the reason for that is that we know that that we want to create user, right? So what happens is we create a function that provides room for what for two parameters. Where the first parameter is what is the session that we want to use, right, in interacting with the database, and the second parameter what is the actual item that needs to be saved to the database. So you could see that that everything now is beginning to make sense now, right? So we pass those two values to that function, and then that function will now be called upon, and then everything within that function will now get executed. So we create the instance of the table we intend to add this information to, and then we commit, we refresh, and then at the end of it all, we send back, right, the new user, and then that new user we want to actually do what we want to actually send it back to the end users, all right, or probably can send back a 201 status code showing that user has been created or that content has been created and was successful. However you want to do or handle the response is all up to you as a developer, right? So we have this now, all right, but then we are still having a little problem. We still have a little problem, all right? Because now if we leave this as it is, right? If we leave this as it is, it means that our session will always be open, right? Though we can just simply come here and close it after being used. You can simply come here and just close it after being used by simply saying db.close. But we don't want to do that because we basically be doing what be repeating this for all our handler that needs to interact with our database, and we don't want to be repeating ourselves, right? We don't want to be repeating ourselves. So what we can do, we can make this what as a dependency, right? We can make this as a dependency, but this time around we are going to create a function that does not use a return keyword, but then make use of what of a yield keyword. Now the difference is that one is an actual function, and the other one is not is what we call a generative function, right? So let me just put this the code here, and then I will simply explain it for us. Okay, so I'll create a dependency here, right? So I'll call this dependency, okay, and then I'll create a function, right? And this function would be to get session, right? Get session function, right? And this function takes nothing. This function takes nothing. It takes nothing as a parameter, right? And then I could simply just put that command there. Now the thing here is this, right? First of all, I want to do this. I want to try. So I put it in a try and except block. I want to try, and then what I want to do is learn is I'll use the keyword called yield. I'll tell you how this keyword works. I want to yield DB, right? Yield DB here is whatever value is being gotten there, and then I want to use finally. Now finally is, I think we talked about finally as well. That is a block of it, that the code within this block actually gets executed, whether there is an error or not, right? It gets executed. DB dot close. Now I'll tell you how this code works, or the trick behind this code. Now you can see that this particular function has no return keyword. It has what? Yield. And the way yield works is that, okay, once you use yield keyword within a function, it automatically converts that function from our normal function to what we call a generator function. Now, a generator function is a function that gets executed one after the other, that get executed, not that do not actually execute everything at the same time. What do I mean? Let's put a simple example here. So I will close this, and then I will call this I'll create a new function here. I'll call this function A, right? And then within this function A, I want to actually say print hello, hello, print hello, right? And then we are missing our column there. And then I want to say return hello. Okay, missing this hello. Yeah. And also say I want to return something else again. I want to return something else again. You can see that the moment I get to the next line, it takes me out of the function, right? And the reason for that is that the way the return keyword works in the function is that it terminates that function, right? So if I should execute this now, you see that what that it will trying to see this. Okay, so let's invoke this function rather. So sorry, let's invoke this function. So if I should run this function now, you see that what that everything within that function gets executed. Everything within it, everything from the first line all the way to the last line. This happens to be what the last line, and then that function does what end. But then if we actually use a keyword called yield, the way the yield keyword works is that it works similar to return statement, except that it does not actually terminate your function. The yield keyword makes it possible that you could come back and do what, and that you could come back and rerun that function and do what, and continue well with other set of instruction. So the yield keyword do not actually terminate the function compared to the returns keyword. The yield keyword execute and then stops once it gets to another yield keyword, and then it will only continue executing when you call on that function again, right? Once you apply the next function on that function, then it continues the execution of that function, and then it keeps doing that till it gets to the end of the function. So let me show you what I mean. Let me show you what I mean. Right. So what I want to do here is what I want to do here is to make use of what I want to do here is make use of yield here, right? Instead of what the return, right? And then use yield here instead of the return. Instead of the return. Yield. And probably I would also want to use yield here again, right? So one thing about yield is that you can use as many yield as you want. You can use as many yield as you want. And this time around, I want to do hello as well. And I want to also do hello 1 or hello 2 rather. And this one here will be hello 3. Now, if I invoke this function, right, as it is, if I invoke this function as it is, you will see that nothing happens, right? Nothing will actually happen. Now, let's see what I mean. If I should assign this to a variable, I'll call this result, okay, and then print this result, rather print results. And then if I go ahead and run this, you see that we have what we call a generator function. Sorry, my terminal is kind of compacted, so you might not actually see this come. But you can see what I'm highlighting here in my terminal. That we have what a generator object. Now the way you work is that it will basically just let Python know that there is a function that exists at this location, right? So what we have here is what is a memory location. Now you see that what that function has actually executed, but then the code within that function has not actually executed. So far that function actually lives within your program, but has never executed. Right? That's the way it works. Now, in order to actually execute that function, we simply use what a built-in function called next, right? And then so basically you want to wrap this man here in a function called next. And then what happens is that this function here, this next function will do what? Will invoke or will start to execute the code within the provided generator function, right? And then stop at wherever it sees what the yield keyword. So if I should run this again, you see that our code will start to do what to execute, but then it will stop after the first hello. You see that what I mean, right? So it stops after the first hello, but that doesn't mean that function has ended, right? That function is still active. Now to at least see the next the continued code within that function, then we simply need to do what? To apply the next what? The next function again on that particular function. And then you keep doing that to what till it finally gets to what to the last portion of that code. Now where this one is now why is generator function much more better than the actual function? Okay, so I think that the generator function saves a lot of memory, right? So if you had a long line of code, let's say we had an instruction that should read from text files, right, line by line, and then if that text file was about 10 million lines of text, right? Then you get to see that over time that Python will throw memory error, right? Because we are drawing a lot of what memory. But but with generator function, we can read those line by line, right? And then what happens is that the moment you start to read the next line, the previous line is what is cleared out of what memory. And once you read the next line, the previous line gets what deleted out of what memory, and that way it saves you a lot of what memory. So that is the beautiful thing about what generator function. And then your function does not terminate once the first result has been returned. So that same concept is what we want to apply in our session, right? We want our dependency to still be active. So after returning the value, we can do what we can still come back and do what and close the session. Now, if I had used the return here, right, I can now come back again and close that session, because that return will simply close would simply do what end the function, right? It will simply end the function. So what we yield, we can do what we can still keep that function breathing, and then we can simply come back and do what and close it. And then the good thing is that if you pass this function as a dependency, Fast API will automatically handle that process. Will handle that process for you. So what happens is that Fast API will automatically invoke that function, right? And then go back again and close that session once the response has been sent out. So what happens is that once a request has been made, right? What happens is that once a request has been made down here, okay, what happens is that Fast API will carry out whatever command lives within this lives within this route handler, and we'll wait till a response has been returned. The moment a response has been returned, it will automatically go back to that function and do what and continue whatever code has been left. All right. So in this case, the only code that's been left now is what is to close the session. Are we following? Are we following?
Yes, sir.
All right. So in that way, we don't have to do what we don't have to think if we would have to if we will be the one to do what to come back and be writing and be applying the next function for it to do what to go back and close that. The first part API will automatically handle that for you, right? So having that in mind, we can just simply pass this function as a dependency now. So this will be my session, right? In this case, and this will be a dependency. So this will make of depends, and depends will simply take what get session, and I'll pass this as session. Sorry, that this should be session, and that is that. So that is basically that. It's just that simple. So you create your session like this. You make use of what of back the going to and fro to open and close the session for you by passing it as a dependency. And then what this is the actual detail that need to be saved. And this is what me creating my session. And this is a function that actually add information to the database. And then in order to add the information, I need to provide what the session. Now why do I need to provide the session? This session is what we'll use right here to do what to carry out the interaction. And then where do we also need to provide the user? Now the user here that we've provided is the actual information that needs to be saved. So in that case, if you go back, you could see that this is what that information that needs to be saved. And then once this has been added, commit and refresh, which it will simply do was send this back for us. Right? It will simply send this back for us. And that is that. And then that is that. And then we have one more thing to do, and we should be up and running. One more thing to do. Right. So what again we need to do is that we need to create our table. So far we've only specified the word that these particular classes should be mapped as a table in a database. Now we need to actually make SQL Alchemy to do what? To go ahead and create that class or convert that class to an actual table within what our database. So that's what we need to do. We need to keep doing that for each time. We need to keep doing that in our main the py file, right? Now the reason for that is that just in case over time we make changes to our database, so that changes would be applied, right? Whenever a new request comes in, that's why that has to live in our main.py file, and it's quite simple to do that. So to make a SQL Alchemy to do what to create this table for you, you simply need to bring in your models. So your model, remember, your models is what will hold what all your classes, right? So yes, all your classes that should be seen as table. So you simply need to bring in those classes to your main.py. So going back to main.py, I will simply bring in those models. So I will, for my model, bring in my model here. And then next thing is for you to do what is to simply say let all that model, which is actually seen as a metadata in SQL Alchemy. All tables are actually seen as metadata, right? So to create them, you simply say what models.base. Now, this models here is a file that contains your classes that should be mapped as what that should be mapped as table in your database, right? That should map as table in your database. So model.base dot metadata metadata model.base.metadata.create all. So dot create all here simply means create all every table that lives within that. Create every table or create table for every class that lives within what our model.py. So the create all method will do what will handle that. Will handle that. And then this create all method takes in a variable called bind. And this bind is referencing should point to what to the database itself, right? To the database itself, which in this case our database here is here, right? This is where we did what this is where we connected to the database. So we simply need to bring that variable to our main.py file. So we have to bring in engine here, and then we pass it to this bind. And that is that. And then you don't have to worry about if for each time you run your code, if it will keep replicating tables. No, it will replicate table. The create all function has the ability to know existing table that have been created, so it will skip them, right? So it only keep creating if there is a new table, or it will keep updating if there's any changes in the table, right? So that's the beautiful thing about what they create all function. So you don't have to worry yourself about that. And that that is that. And we should be up and running. So we have our table created here, all our tables created there. And if there is changes, then that those changes will still be applied from there. Okay. And we have our session, and then we use yield, which simply means that once the value of a session has been sent out, that function should not terminate. Okay, so that's the whole purpose of yield. The function should not terminate, because if you use the return statement, then that function will terminate automatically. So once this value has been sent out, that function should still be active, so we can come back and know and close the session, and that will be done automatically by fast API. We have our function that creates, and we simply do what we simply return. So far we don't have this database here created. There's no problem once we want to do what to interact. And then the beautiful thing about SQL Alchemy, and or when working with SQLite, once we try to interact with that database, if it's not available, then it will automatically create that file and do and interact with it. But if it's there, then it will simply do what start the interaction. So you don't have to manually come and create that file, right? SQL Alchemy will create that file on its own. And that is that, right? That is that. So let's simply just do what? Go back to our postman and fire up this request one more time. So if I should go ahead and send this, that should go through by second time. And let me show that our UV code is still working. All right, so okay, so we have a problem. We have a bug. We have a bug. So let's go and fix that bug. So the bug here is this. All right, the bug here is this. If you go back to our models, we have a class here that we've also specified that this class should be considered as well as a table. So since we are not ready to use that class as of now, because in order to remember, I said that these names are compulsory, and that is the problem that we're having here. So you said that there's a class called books that there's a class called books that does not have the table name specified, right? So at the moment we don't intend to use this table for now, so I can comment it out. That is our problem that we're having. All right, so I think it says says let's let's send it one more time. All right, so it's sync. Right, let us close our terminal. Our terminal can be misnamed. And let's bring it back up one more time. UV gone. Of the ah reload. All right, so let's go ahead and let's fire this up one more time. Right, so let's send this request one more time. So it says internal server error. It says invalid keyword first name is an invalid keyword argument for user. Let's be sure. Let's be sure that this is that we have everything in place. So we'll go back and confirm this with our model. So I'll copy model just for confirmation. Go back to our CRUD. So I think this is where the problem is coming from. Put it down there. Let's confirm that the spelling of this first name. So you see, I think we had a problem there, I think. Oh, so the problem was actually from our models. And so during our creation of model, we spelled our first name wrongly. You see, the first name here is spelled wrongly. So we can either correct it here, or we can either just use it the way it is in our listing here. All right. So I will simply just remove this. And so that's where the problem is coming from. So go back to our database, our model, and let's correct this spelling. So this should be first name. Okay, so let's try this one more time. So because we have our create all in our main.py, then that should actually capture those changes and work appropriately as it should. Let's send one more time. Let's see what happens to be not working. It says that what? Let's see. Okay, so that those changes has already been applied. That's the problem is. So let's go ahead and let's close our terminal and bring it back up again. So UVCon app the main column app dash reload. That's I'm having spelling error with. Okay, so let's try one more time. Let's see, that should go through as expected. Right, so that actually went through as expected. Right, so that went through and then our information was what was being saved as expected. Now we can actually close our server and come back what any server at all, and we will still get that information because this information is not actually saved in memory, but then it's saved in a database, right? So we don't have to worry about information being what getting to miss, right? Getting to miss again, getting to miss again, right? So you could see that the ID itself has been sent out as well, even though we never specified ID, right? Like I said that that these are fields that gets populated automatically. That gets populated automatically. All right. A question before we wrap it up for today.
Yes,
Quickly.
sir. So I have a question.
All
Rahim.
right, please. Go ahead.
Okay, sir, please, what if we want to save a picture? Can we still save pictures to the database, like profile pictures?
Yes, we're gonna actually handle that. Okay, so it seems that database may actually take up to 3 classes. So in our next class, we're gonna see how we can handle file storage. So basically, you don't want to save your picture in a database, right? You want to put your folder or your files in a file storage and basically save the URL of that file. What do I mean? If you have a proper picture, you basically want to save it somewhere, probably in your cloud or in an automated cloud, bro, right? A cloud that allows that actually allows you to do what to automate it. So we'll be using Cloudinary. Okay, all right. We'll be using Cloudinary. So you basically want to put your files there and then do what? Save the URL of that file in your database. Do you understand? So let's say
Yes,
you
sir.
have right. So let's say you have some music file or profile picture. Then what you could do is you could simply pack those files, put it in, let's say, in your Google Drive, for instance, and then you do what? You save the URL of that other file in your database, right? That's what you want to do. So database you can't actually put in your files there, right? It's not actually recommended. It's not actually convenient to do that, right? It's not convenient to do that. It's not convenient. So we'll look at file storage in our next class, file storage. And we also look at PostgreSQL, right? So look at how you can actually get an actual PostgreSQL database and work with that. And then we can also look at relationships in SQL Alchemy. And then hopefully that should wrap up everything pertaining to database and file storage. Any other question?
Yes,
Any other
sir.
question? Okay.
Sir, please, it's not relating to the class, but sir, what about the Git? Are we still going to learn?
What about the yes? We are Git yes. We are gonna learn it. Definitely, we are going to learn it because in order to deploy your product, you need to understand it. So we are going to learn it. Any other question? Any
Yes,
other
sir.
question? Okay.
Yes, sir. So please, this one is just a personal thing.
Yeah,
I've,
hello, good evening, sir.
So,
hello.
so I think yes, please can Mr. Valentine is it
Yes,
Elliot?
yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that so, I've, I've also dropped the link to your DM, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So I think at some point, network, I love what you said. You said that you finished your task, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, yes, sir. Please. And I've not been graded. Yes. Oh,
All
network.
tasks have been created. I don't think they which task is this?
So tax 5, sir.
Perfect. All right. So I'll look at that. But I believe
Oh,
all tasks have been created. That's
okay.
fine. All right. Any other? I'll look at that for Valentine is. That's
Yeah,
fine.
Okay.
hello, sir.
Okay.
Hello, sir. Good evening.
Evening.
Okay, so please, I want to confirm if the last video for last class was uploaded because when I checked this morning, it was not there.
Well, it should be. It should be. Please, after the class, you can actually confirm again. It should be there. There. Just check back one more time. It should be there. I'm sure it should be.
Okay, sir.
All right. Any other question before I wrap it up for today? Any other? All right. So once again, like I said, these things may be looking not too wonderful, all right? But trust me, SQL Alchemy is a fantastic library. So I would recommend that just go to your browser and just say SQL Alchemy documentation. People don't really like reading documentation, but trust me, the best place you could ever learn is documentation. Documentation actually provides you with details of that library, and at times documentation can be very, very not too wonderful, not too wonderful, right? But then what you want to do is you want to go to tutorials or getting started, right? Basically here, okay, and then we could start with quick start. The quick start should give you a brief of these things, right? So you see, so you just start with this and just look at it. It's quite very much, right? But you don't basically need to cover the entire library. You need to understand how to connect it to a database, how to make basic interaction, and you're good to go, right? And you're good to go. But I'm sure that I'll cover the basics by next class, and then that should help us in the project phase. So our next class we will look at we'll be looking at cloudinary, cloudinary, another fantastic um, platform where you could use for file storage. Now, why are we not using a Google Drive? We can automate Google Drive. That's the bad thing about that. There's no way we can fetch data from Google Drive using programming. But with Clarinary, we could now all these things are actually paid version, but all of them has free ones. And then for database, we'll be getting a free Postgres database that lasts for only 3 months from Render. I believe most of us have heard of Render. And we'll also be deploying from Render as well. So basically that's what we'll cover in our next class. And we should wrap it up completely with database and storage and that. And then we should now head over to documentation and then call it off for teaching. Teaching should wrap up. Our highest should be Monday next week. We should be done with tutoring. And then we should use the remaining classes to work on simple projects in preparation for project phase. In preparation for project phase, there will be no classes for that month. It's just you and your team members. I can only come in when there's problem, but I'm not coming in to teach. Coming in to look at what should be done, point out some few steps, and then I disappear. Right. So I have to prepare us for that phase so we can function very well in our team. Okay, so in the absence of any other question, I think we should wrap it up for today. And I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Bye for now. Before that, is Precious Steve. Are you still active on this call? Okay, not Precious Steve, Precious Udoibo.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, active. I don't know how you happen to be the host of this meeting, but however it is, end the meeting for all of us. Thank you.